From 1982 to 2024, Microsoft Flight Simulator has been one of the best flight simulation games ever created. I mean, comparing its first release to where it is now, it is a phenomenal upgrade. Buckle up as we go through the evolution of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It all began with a pilot named Bruce Hartwig who was heavily passionate about computers. He founded a software company called Sublogic in 1977. After 2 years of development, he released the very first flight simulator for the Apple II computer. The graphics were very minimal due to the Apple II computer only having 4 kilobytes of RAM and a processor running at only 1 MHz. Microsoft had seen Bruce's creation and gained interest in obtaining the license for Sublogic. And in 1982, Microsoft released Microsoft Flight Simulator 1.0. Players could pilot a Cessna 182 over a minimalistic polygonal landscape. Despite the technological limitations, the game sold around 150,000 copies. Version 2.0 was launched in 1984. It made small improvements to the original version by featuring better graphics and more detailed aircraft. With version 2.0, players can now control the aircraft either with a joystick or a mouse. Version 2.0 was an incredible success. It sold over 400,000 copies, receiving positive reviews for its improvements. Released in 1988, version 3.0 allowed players to change the camera for the very first time. It also featured better graphics, higher frame rates, and better terrain representation, making it a major upgrade for the time. Version 3.0 was a huge success, selling over 750,000 copies, and the community praised the game for its design. Version 4.0 was released in 1989. It made small improvements in graphics, and it was the first time to create custom flight plans. It also introduced clouds, random weather, and more dynamic conditions. With the user-friendly interface and improved realism, version 4.0 was a huge success, selling over 1 million copies. Moving on to 1993, version 5.0 bumped the realism by introducing textures. The game featured artificial intelligence and enhanced weather effects. Version 5.1 was released in 1995, featuring major upgrades like satellite imagery and better optimization. Nonetheless, MS Flight Simulator 5.1 was a massive success, selling over 2 million copies, and received positive feedback for its creation. After the release of Windows 95, Microsoft developed a flight simulator exclusively for Windows, offering smoother performance and better integration with the operating system. The game was almost the same, but it did have higher resolution textures and additional aircraft. Flight Simulator 95 was praised for its smoother engine, selling over 5.1 million copies. Just 1 year later, Flight Simulator 98 was released in 1997. It was the first game in the franchise to introduce a multiplayer mode. It also featured a helicopter, minor improvements in graphics, and better optimization, though players were left a bit disappointed due to the minor changes. As a result, only 1 million copies were sold. Next up, Flight Simulator 2000. It was the first game to feature 2 versions, a standard and a pro. The pro version included extra additional aircraft. The game added over 17,000 new airports, making it a total of 20,000 airports in the game. The simulator also featured new weather effects like rain and snow. While the game promised stunning visuals and realistic environments, it was very demanding to run, especially due to its huge hardware requirements, which at the time most PCs struggled to keep up. The next edition, Flight Simulator 2002, improved vastly over previous versions. In addition to improved graphics, the 2002 simulator introduced air traffic control to communicate with airports, and artificial intelligence aircraft to fly alongside computer-controlled aeroplanes. It featured major upgrades in graphics and scenery. The game was much smoother and optimized compared to its predecessor. Continuing on was Flight Simulator 2004. It celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Wright brothers' first aerial advancements. The simulator featured new classic and historical aircraft, including the Wright Flyer, which was made by the brothers. Microsoft focused on improving the weather system by introducing real-time weather that allowed players to fly with live weather data based on their current location. It also featured 3D clouds and a reworked GPS system. Flight Simulator 2004 was a huge success, receiving a score of 88 on Metacritic. 2 years later, Flight Simulator X was released in 2006. With its higher resolution textures and better physics, it was very advanced for its time. The game introduced missions that tasked players to do various air challenges. Flight Simulator X also allowed players to be an air traffic controller and let 2 players fly the same aeroplane.
747 wing strike on the runways in F-18 is doing smoked donuts on the ramp. And a 747 has had a complete nose failure.
The standard version of the game included 18 airplanes and 28 detailed cities, while the deluxe edition added even more aircraft and more detailed cities. The game also featured a wing flex mechanic, making airplane wings bend and bounce just like in real life. On top of its innovations and multiplayer capability, an expansion pack called Flight Simulator X Acceleration was released a year later. The expansion pack featured even more aircraft and additional missions. With over 24,000 detailed airports, Flight Simulator X was a successful release, selling over 2 million copies and receiving a score of 80 on Metacritic. After a staggering 14 years of halt, the next game in the series has finally arrived. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 has become, without a doubt, the best flight simulation game of all time. Why though? Well, for starters, the graphics received a major overhaul compared to its predecessor. The in-game scenery is basically a virtual recreation of the entire Earth, built with the help of Bing satellite imagery in conjunction with the Black Shark AI system. This was used to create photorealistic 3D models of buildings, trees, water, and other geographical features. Famous landmarks and handcrafted locations are added all the time, thanks to world and city updates. With advanced physics and real-time weather system, it was highly more advanced than any other flight simulator at the time. However, a slight hiccup is that the game required a high-end computer to play it at its best, with a minimum requirement of 8GB of RAM, 2GB of dedicated video memory, and at least 180GB of available storage. It also became much more accessible now that it has been released on the Xbox Series X and S and even the Xbox One via Xbox Cloud Gaming. The game was released in 3 different editions, with the standard version having over 20 aircraft and 30 handcrafted airports. The deluxe edition adds 5 more aircraft and replaces 5 generic airports with handcrafted versions. Then there's the Premium Deluxe edition, which adds even 5 more aircraft and replaces even 5 more generic airports with handcrafted versions. The game also featured a virtual reality version just 2 months after release, making flying much more realistic than ever before. 2 years later, a free update was released. The update, called 40th Anniversary Edition, added more aircraft, more airports, and more classical missions. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 was an incredibly successful game, selling over 12 million copies and generating over $800 million in revenue. It also received several awards, including the Best Sim Strategy Game by the Game Awards. IGN gave it a score of 10 out of 10, with the comment, quote, "the most incredible experience I've ever had on a computer." With multiple expansions like Top Gun Maverick and the Dune expansion, the game received an exceptional score of 91 on Metacritic. In 2024, we saw the release of a new game in the series that no one had ever expected. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. This time, it's not just about flying, it's about living the full aviation experience. For the first time in the series, the game introduced a career mode that lets you progress through certifications and licenses, turning your flight journey into a fully fledged professional experience. Some specialized missions include search and rescue missions, cargo transport, aerial firefighting, and many more. This time, you would only need 30 GB of available storage thanks to Microsoft's Azure technology. This allows for photorealistic 3D models of aircraft, buildings, trees, and other 3D models to be streamed from the cloud. For fans of creativity, a brand new photographer mode was introduced that lets you capture stunning in-game landmarks and natural wonders. And if that's not enough, the game also features weekly challenges that offer fresh, exciting new scenarios. The game is available in 4 different editions, with the standard edition having over 70 aircraft and 150 handcrafted airports, with the deluxe edition adding 10 more aircraft and replaces 5 generic airports with handcrafted versions. The Premium Deluxe Edition adds 15 more aircraft and replaces even 5 more generic airports with handcrafted versions. And then there's the Aviator Edition, which adds a whopping 30 more aircraft in the game, but doesn't add any more airports. However, the launch wasn't without turbulence, as early players discovered an enormous number of bugs, some so severe it made the game literally unplayable for many. Microsoft quickly acknowledged these problems and began rolling out patches to issue these game-breaking bugs. Despite these major issues, the game received a disappointing score of 77 on Metacritic, while IGN gave it a score of 9 out of 10, expressing its major upgrades. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider subscribing. Comment below your favorite part of this video and check out my other videos like this evolution of Resident Evil.